Mishnah Bet. Second Mishnah. Gag gadol samuch lekatan. We have a big roof that is close to a small roof. If you look at the picture, it's like a square. We have a square, and then that square has another small square coming out of it. ויש מעקה לסביב שתי הגגות. And we have a fence around the two roofs. So the same height? The gagot are the same height, yeah. The same height gagot, and there's a fence around them. Because look at the way it looks. It's closed on three sides, all of them. One of them is closed on four sides. Now, so you're thinking now that it's the same house. Okay. It might be the same house, it's probably, but it can also be not the same house. Same roof can be on 50 houses.
Okay, of course.
Yeah.
But it's the same roof.
It's the same roof, but it's enclosed with a fence. Okay. The fence.
I don't understand why they're saying two roofs here.
Because the fence, when you put a mechitza, the fence makes it into a domain. Let me give you an example.
Well, you didn't do it on the roof like this.
All the way through. Is your sukkah a private domain?
My sukkah is.
You put it in a public area.
I think it is private.
How many sides?
It can be because it's inside my yard.
No, forget your yard. Let's say you put it on the street.
It's a private domain.
Okay, it's a private domain. You make it into a private domain, right? Yeah. How many sides does it need?
2.5.
If you close it on three sides, even though you don't have a fourth side, it's already designated this as an area. So over here, you are designated area because of the sides that you put on. If there were no sides, like he says, if there were no marke, then there's no area. But over here, there's a fence around it, and that fence designated into an area.
Show me, where is the two roofs here? I don't understand. This look to me like one roof.
It is one roof.
If this is going to be cut here, then you say it's two roofs maybe. אבל זה one roof.
Yeah, it is one roof.
Oh, it is one.
It is physically it's one roof, but you designated it as two roofs.
Two roofs.
The designation is two roofs because you closed it off, like you made it a designated area by the thing. Okay. הגדול מותר, הגג גדול מותר לעלות עליו בשבת כלים מתוך הבית שלמטה. So you're allowed to take vessels from your house into the big roof. ואין הגג הקטן אוסר על הגג הגדול. And the small roof doesn't make it prohibited on the big roof. So it means, you see, if you took a vessel on the big roof, to the big roof, the vessel is inside the sukkah. Theoretically. You see, that it has it's almost like it has a room with four sides. The big roof is a room with four sides. והקטן אסור, but the small one is prohibited. Why is the small one prohibited? והגג הקטן אסור לעלות עליו בשבת כלים מן הבית. But the small roof, you're not allowed to put vessels on it from the house. לפי שהוא כולו פרוץ לגג הגדול. Because it is completely open on one side to the other roof. Do you see it? It's completely open. In other words, the big roof has four sides, and the small roof only has three sides. והוא אוסר עליו את הטלטול בתוכו. And therefore it is prohibited now to carry in the small one. אבל לגבי הגג הגדול, but you're going to say, hey, but it's the same thing exactly. It says, לגבי הגג הגדול, אין החלק הפתוח שבין הגגות נחשב כפריצה. It says, if you look at the big roof, even though it's the same area which is open between the two, we're not going to call that an opening. Why are we not going to call that an opening? For the small roof, we're calling it an opening, and for the big roof, you're not calling it an opening. How does that make sense? אלא כפתח לגג קטן, it says you're allowed to make a doorway. It's a doorway. All it is.
Why is it a doorway for the small one?
Because it's too large to be a doorway. Not just too large. You see, the big roof has like two indicators that there's a fence there. The small roof doesn't have any indicators that there's a wall over there, that there's a mechitza, that there's a boundary. There's no indicator. That's what the problem is. שהרי יש לו באותו הצד הפתוח לגג הקטן מחיצות עודפות, גיפופים, it's called. It's called, you can see that there's a boundary over there. You can see that there's meant to be a wall over here. But the wall happens to have a doorway.
But where is the Mishnah? We learn on the gagot, I can jump from this gag to this gag. Why this gag is different? I know. Because he has ma'akeh.
First of all, I don't know who the Mishnah is according to. You don't know.
It's land.
Wait. You don't know who the Mishnah is according to. The Mishnah can be according to Chachamim.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now you...
Yeah. I don't know who the Mishnah is according to. Yeah. Mikan u'mikan b'ma'akeh. So they've got two boundaries on both sides. V'chegon she'en ha'pirtza yoter מ10 amot. And of course, if the opening is more than 10 amot, then it's considered to be opening for both of them. So it has to be a small opening. Not small, but it has to be less than 10 amot. Hilkach ein הגג הקטן אוסר על הגג הגדול. So therefore, you're allowed to carry vessels into the big roof because the big roof has a boundary completed, but the small roof is opened. וכן, and the same idea is חצר גדולה שנפרצה לקטנה. You've got a big courtyard that the wall between the big courtyard and the small courtyard fell. Exactly the same drawing, use exactly the same drawing, but this is a courtyard. There's a small courtyard and a big courtyard. And the wall in between them fell. And it's less than 10 amot, the wall in between them.
There is no wall.
Between them there's no wall, it fell. There used to be and now it's not there anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it fell on Shabbos, let's say. Right? So since the big one has the gifufim, has the boundary set that you can see where the boundary is, it will be allowed. But the small one is completely open into the big one. You cannot see the boundaries. We will disallow it. כגון שנפל הכותל שבין החצר הקטנה והחצר הגדולה במלואו, the wall fell between the two courtyards, ונמצא שלחצר הקטנה לא נשארו אלא 3 מחיצות בלבד. And the small courtyard now only has 3 walls. ואילו לחצר הגדולה נשארו עוד גיפופים משני הפרצה. And to the big courtyard we have 4 walls. Small ones on the 2 corners, just like in the picture of the roofs. הגדולה מותרת, again, the big one you're allowed to carry from your house to it. בני החצר הגדולה מותרים להוציא להכניס מבתיהם לחצר עם ערבו. They're allowed to make an eruv. If they did make an eruv, they're allowed to carry into the big courtyard. But the people who live around the small courtyard are done. והקטנה אסורה. ובני החצר הקטנה אסורים להוציא מבתיהם לחצרם. They're prohibited to take from their courtyards to the houses, שהרי נפרצה במלואה because it opened completely. ונמצאת החצר הגדולה אוסרת עליה. And the big courtyard prohibited on it. ברם, החצר הקטנה אינה אוסרת על הגדולה. But the small one does not prohibit on the big one because the big one has 4 boundaries while the small one doesn't. מפני שהיא כפתחה של גדולה because it is considered to be like an opening, like a doorway of the big one. שהפרצה נחשבת כפתח של החצר הגדולה. It's considered to be like an opening of the big courtyard. הואיל ונשארו לה מחיצות עודפות מכאן ומכאן, like we said before, because they have the boundaries set on both sides. ואינה יתרה מ10 אמות. And obviously it's not allowed to be longer than 5 meters, which is 10 אמות. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara it's explained, שאף החצר הקטנה אינה אסורה. It says that even if the small courtyard is not prohibited, אלא אם כי נפרצה החצר קודם השבת. It's only prohibited if the wall fell before Shabbat. אבל אם נפרצה בשבת, but if the wall fell during Shabbat, since in the beginning of Shabbat it was there, and we say the beginning of Shabbat is what makes the boundary, yeah? אף הקטנה מותרת, also the small one is permitted, שכיוון שהותרה למקצת השבת קודם שנפרצה, because when Shabbat came in, it was still standing there, and it was permitted, the entire courtyard was permitted, הותרה לכל השבת כולה, we're going to permit it for the entire Shabbat, but obviously for the next Shabbat you'll have to fix it, otherwise you will not be able to do it. Same idea, חצר שנפרצה לרשות הרבים. A courtyard that the wall fell into the public domain. The wall between it and the public domain fell. שנפד הכותל שבין החצר לרשות הרבים, that the wall between this courtyard to the public domain fell, במלואו, completely. או שנעשתה בו פרצה ברוחב של יותר מ10 אמות. Or it didn't fall completely, but it's more than 5 meters, more than 10 אמות. ואפילו בשבת, even on Shabbat it happened. So you would say, if it happened on Shabbat, since it was there before Shabbat, I'm safe, I can carry into that courtyard. So it says, המכניס מתוכה לרשות היחיד, if you take from it to the private domain, או המציא מרשות היחיד לתוכה, or if you take out from your house into that courtyard, חייב, you're obligated. חטאת בשוגה או מיתה בזית, from the Torah. It's an obligation from the Torah. But we say that when Shabbos comes in, it comes in already? Yes, it says, it looks like when we say this rule, Shabbos comes in, it comes in, we're only going to use it in some cases, we're not going to use it in other cases. In here, we're not going to use it at all. Why not? This is according to, maybe just because of Rabbi Eliezer. This is Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. This is the words of Rabbi Eliezer. שלדעתו, that according to him, חצר זו דינה כרשות הרבים. It says this kind of courtyard, it is like a public domain. It is just like in my house, the front courtyard. So what do you mean? It's public domain. Anybody can, there's no walls over here. וחכמים אומרים, and the sages says, מתוכה לרשות הרבים, if you take from it to the public domain, המוציא מתוכה לרשות הרבים, או מכניס מרשות הרבים לתוכה, it says, you're not obligated from the Torah, since it happened on Shabbat, and on Shabbat it was allowed already, when Shabbat comes in it was allowed, the rabbis tell you don't do it now, yeah, but it's not from the Torah, it's only from the rabbis when you're allowed to carry. Patur, we say, we already know, patur אבל אסור, you're patur, but you are prohibited. מפני שהיא ככרמלית, because that area is considered to be like Carmel, it's not רשות הרבים, it's not רשות היחיד, you know. ולא כרשות הרבים. In other words, this is not public domain, and the proof that it's not public domain, the neighbor is not going to, you know, he will walk on the street, or my neighbors are going to walk on the street, or on the path next to it, but he's not going to walk between my courtyard. They know that it's mine, it's Carmelit. Now it's not public domain. And I can tell them, hey, what are you doing there? The fact that I can chase him away shows that it's not a public domain completely. והוא הדין לדעת חכמים, and this is also the reasoning according to the sages, במוציא מרשות היחיד לתוכה, when you take from the private domain to the Carmelit, to this area, או המכניס מתוכה לרשות היחיד, or you take from it to the private domain. So whether you take from it to the public domain, or you take from it to the private domain, it's patur, it's not because it's Carmelit, אסור. פטור אבל אסור. אוקיי. יש מתחבטים בזה, there are those who have it hard trouble, שנקטו חכמים מתוכה לרשות הרבים. It says, why did you even go from it to the public domain? You should have, it made more sense to say from my house to it. Why did you go to the public domain? ולא כדברי רבי אליעזר מתוכה לרשות היחיד. And not like רבי אליעזר that says from it to the private domain. ברם, לפי מסקנת הגמרת יוצא, according to the Gemara it comes out, שאף רבי אליעזר מודה שבתוך החצר דינה ככרמלית. He admits that inside the courtyard it is a Carmelit. ולא נחלקו אלא במקום המחיצה שנפרצה. שרבי אליעזר סובר. So in other words, Rabbi Eliezer also holds that if you go to the side where there's a wall, it's still Carmelit. His problem is only on that area that got broken. In other words, he admits that the other areas are still they're not Reshut HaYachid, but it's Carmelit according to him. His area is only duch and duch from the opening. צידי רשות הרבים דינם כרשות הרבים. It says the side of the public domain are like the public domain. חכמים סוברים שצידי רשות הרבים אינם כרשות הרבים. They say that the sides of the public domain are not like the public domain. ומה שנקט רבי אליעזר מתוכה, and the fact that רבי אליעזר says from inside of it, אין כוונתו מתוך החצר. It doesn't mean from the courtyard itself, אלא מתוך מקום מחיצתה. It means the place where there used to be a boundary. ולפי כשחכמים נקטו מתוכה, and because the sages said from it, אף רבי אליעזר נקט לשון זה. Also Rabbi Eliezer held this language.